listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
Well, good Monday morning to you, everyone. Thank you for letting me spend some time with you today. I am not actually being monitored and supervised by Myra. She is still taking care of the grandchildren. Susie's here. She's kind of keeping an eye on me as best she can for a 4-month-old puppy. If you like what you hear, if you would please hit those share buttons, like buttons, and all those good things. It just helps other people find us easier, just like you did. If you check out GiveGod90.com, there is a link there to the interview I had last week with Rick Bratton for This Week in America. You might want to look at that or listen to that and check it out. So that's available for you. Today is October 7th, and it was a year ago when Hamas chose to basically invade Israel. Since that time, a lot has happened. Since that time, a lot of things are going on. There was a lot of talk about a possible uprising again today, being the anniversary. I wasn't 100% certain it was going to happen for a lot of reasons. And as of a few minutes ago, I don't think anything has happened because it hasn't come across any of the news that I look at yet. It's part of the reason that Mara didn't come home today is because of the places she has to travel through. It's like, just in case, right? You want to stay vigilant. You want to stay safe. And I had a thought this morning. It goes back to some things I was taught a long time ago. And that is, just because your enemy is silent doesn't mean you're winning. It means they're planning. So bear that in mind. Stay vigilant out there. Stay safe. And all those good things. Enough about that. Some of the things I'm going to talk about today, I would say this to anyone 12, 13, and older. If you're listening with younger children, you might want to put your headphones in just because of the content of what it is. You might get asked some questions you might not be ready to answer yet for them. But these things need to be said. And it needs to be put out there in a way that is relevant, and it needs to be put out there in a way that is straightforward as I can make it. And what I'm going to say comes straight out of Scripture, so there is that warning for you. We absolutely know, and you've heard me say this often, there are some denominations who base their doctrine on just a very few verses in the Bible. There are some denominations who base part of their doctrine on just a very, 1 or 2 verses. And there's a problem with that, because if you don't study carefully, you may be basing your doctrine on something that is impossible. Okay? It would probably not have been written by the original writers. And I'm going to focus on one topic today because it's one of the things I get so many questions about, especially from Christians. Now, my Jewish listeners won't be disappointed here either, because hopefully the information I'm going to give you will help you better educate some of your Christian friends after you hear this. So let's begin with something that Yeshua, Jesus, is recorded as saying. He says, "My teaching is not my own," Jesus replied. "It comes from him who sent me. If anyone desires to do his will, he will know whether my teaching is from God or whether I speak on my own. He who speaks on his own authority seeks his own glory. But he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is a man of truth. In him there is no falsehood. That, of course, comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 7. And then later in John chapter 12, verse 49, we read, I have not spoken on my own, but the Father who sent me has commanded me what to say and how to say it. So Yeshua is recorded as saying, he came to teach the things our Creator has said. He came, basically, he's saying, I came to make sure you understand what is written. Okay? He's recorded as saying that. That's what we have in John's Gospel. And I kind of glaze over what I'm going to talk about today in God's Universe, God's Rules, because I didn't want to bring up the controversy of, did he say what I'm going to look at next? Okay? And here's where the dilemma comes, because there's something that Yeshua, Jesus, is recorded as saying that I am not convinced he would have said if what we read in John is true. Let me say that again. I'm not convinced that what we're about to look at, Yeshua, Jesus, could have said if what John records him saying is true. Okay? In Matthew 5:32 and 19:9, we read, I tell you, anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality brings adultery upon her, and he who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Now, Luke 16:18 kind of alludes to this, but he looks at it from a different point of view. And even Paul seems to write as if he agrees with this thing in his letter to the Corinthians. So here's the dilemma. It is written, as Yeshua, Jesus, is so fond of saying in Leviticus, and this is a long list, so I'm going to condense it, okay? None of you are to approach any close relative to have relations, okay? You must not expose the nakedness of your father by having relations with your mother. You must not have relations with your father's wife. You must not have relation with your sister or your mother's daughter, which means your daughter, right? You must not have relations with your son's daughter, your daughter-in-law. You must have relations with the daughter of your father's wife, born of your father. She's your sister. You must not have relations with your father's sister. She's a close relative. She will be your aunt. The list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. You must not lie carnally with an animal. Do not defile yourself by these practices, for these things the nations I am driving out before you have defiled themselves. He says, look, don't do what the people around you have been doing. This isn't right. And if you want to read the whole list, it's found in Leviticus 18. And I go through this list. For one reason. It's the Greek word found in Matthew 5. Translated here as sexual immorality. The Strong's number is G4202 if you're keeping score. And that word is porneia, where we get pornography, right? It basically means sexual immorality. It's defined as fornication, whoredom, idolatry even. The punishment for this is found in Leviticus chapter 20. And again, I'm going to condense this because it's kind of long. If a man commits adultery with another man's wife, the wife of his neighbor or the adulterer and both the adulterer and the adulteress must be put to death. If a man lies with his father's wife, they must be put to death, both of them. If a man lies with his daughter-in-law, both must be put to death. If a man lies with a man as a woman, both must be put to death. If a man lies with an animal, both must be put to death. If a woman approaches an animal to mate with it, kill the animal and the woman. This is the punishment for sexual immorality, not just adultery. We seem to forget these things in the world we live in today. Cultures throughout the ages have decided, well, it's not that bad. And some cultures who practice this anyway, even when they became believers, when they became Christian, they didn't stop doing the things they were doing. They just sort of said, yeah, it's not that important. And we just don't kill people randomly for these things. It's kind of the world we live in today, isn't it? You have pastors doing this. You have church elders doing these things. You have rabbis doing these things. I hate to say that, but they have been caught, accused, dishonored, embarrassed, shamed, just like everybody else. Just because you are someone who knows Scripture, you are tempted by sin. And it's how you react to that temptation that defines your character. But what does all of these things mean for the question, did Yeshua, Jesus, say what he's recorded as saying in Matthew 5:32 and 19:9? If he claims to teach only what the Creator has spoken, he could not have said these words, because everyone listening to him at the time would have known that the punishment for sexual immorality is death. There's no need for divorce. You can't divorce a dead person. Don't forget, marriage ends with the death of a spouse. It is impossible to commit adultery against a dead person. Can't be done. There is a provision for a widow with no children, right? Someone within the tribe or the king of Israel at the time must marry that person. They must enter into a covenant relationship with that person in an attempt to provide offspring so that they can be cared for. Doesn't mean you bring them into your house and it's a free-for-all. You would provide them with their own home. You would care for them just like you would care for the wife that you love. But it was a way to make sure that the widows and the fatherless were cared for. Had very little to do with sex, right? There's also provisions in the Word of our Creator for divorce, and they basically fall into one category. If the husband or the wife fails to uphold the Creator's instructions, and that can be, man, woman, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. If the man found no favor, no grace in the woman, well, if the husband isn't being a good provider, if he isn't doing the things that he needs to do to follow the Creator's instructions, it was the duty of the woman then to remove grace from the home. Now, it was the man who had to write the get, the bill of divorce. And it had to be very, very detailed because it was a legal and binding document. He would give it to the wife, and either he would leave if he was the one that was in offense, or she would leave if she was the one that was in offense. Right? Now, if the man didn't want to divorce his wife and she removed grace from the home, what happens? Solomon writes, better to live on the corner of the house, on the corner of the roof, than to share a house with a quarrelsome wife. Isn't that amazing? And he also writes, it's better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and angry woman. you might be better off just to leave. You might be better off if you just pack up and go. If you don't want to divorce her, if you don't want to get remarried, if you're done, if you're over it, just leave. That's that's some hard teaching right there, right? But that's what Scripture says. They're basically examples of what happens when a woman removes grace from the home because the husband is not following the Creator's instructions. Now, if the woman's the one, he can sit down and say, well, she did this, she didn't do that, she's here, she's there, whatever she might be doing that she shouldn't be doing, or whatever she's not doing that she should be doing, he would write it out. And the reason that the bill of divorce, the get, was given to the woman was if someone sees her and thinks a lot of her and falls in love with her, whatever the case may be, then she would show that person this bill of divorce. He would read through it carefully, hopefully, and he could decide, can I live with this or can I not live with this? Have you learned your lesson? Are you doing the things? Now, if the man, on the other hand, is the one who leaves, basically he has no home, he has nothing, he can't provide for a family, chances are he's going to sell himself into servitude and hopefully learn his lesson. See, there's reasons for the way that the Creator has designed this to live. There's reasons he established this covenant in Exodus 20 through 23 and said, here's how to do things, here's how to live, hoping that people would learn from it. But we all know sometimes we're a little hard-headed, sometimes we're a little stubborn, sometimes we're a little proud, and some people never learn. Now, for the priests, the Levitical priesthood, there was a different standard. See, the priests were the example for the people. So in Leviticus 21, the priest must marry a woman who's a virgin. He is not to marry a widow. He's not to marry a divorced woman, one who is defiled by prostitution. He was married to marry a virgin from his own people. You see, the priests were not authorized to divorce. However, after the exile, remember the Babylonian exile, after the exile, not all priests were Levites. Some were from the tribe of Benjamin. Some were from others. That's why we have the corruption of the priesthood that we read about later, after the exile. So, for those wondering why Yeshua would allow the woman caught in adultery to go free, because Christians are probably going, well, he lets this woman go. What's going on? Remember, it is written in Leviticus that both must be put to death. Adultery is one of those things you cannot do by yourself. Okay? When Yeshua Jesus leans over and he's scratching in the dirt, there's a lot of guesses as to why he does this. But people forget. People forget, right? If we go back to Jeremiah 17:13, Jeremiah cries out, O Yehovah, the hope of Israel, all who abandon you will be put to shame. All who turn away all who turn away will be written in the dust, for they have abandoned Jehovah, the fountain of living water. I'm going to speculate just a little bit, and I don't think it's a far speculation. As Yeshua is writing in the dust, what's he writing? There is a very good chance that what he's writing is the names of the priests and the people who brought only the woman, because they are the ones who abandoned the sacred word of our Creator, knowing that they have to bring both the man and the woman. They would have seen what he was doing. They would have remembered Jeremiah. And basically, they would have hung their heads in shame. They would have walked away quietly in complete embarrassment. Because that was so important. You will be put to shame. All who turn away will be written in the dust. If he's writing their names, writing a list in the dust, they see it, they know what they have done. Let all who have not abandoned the sacred word of our Creator cast the first stone. Now, it wasn't that she wasn't guilty, but they were equally as guilty as she. They were equally as guilty. All of this is a huge reason why we need to learn how to study the Bible forensically and not just give it our best guess as to what something might mean. We can put the clues together. They're there. All we have to do is find them and put them together. Now, for those denominations out there who claim that the only reason for divorce is adultery, you can no longer hide behind this. It's your own agenda. It's your own misunderstanding. It's your own interpretation. And you claim that it's in the Bible, but it can't be. If what Yeshua said in John is true and accurate, he could not have said what he said in Matthew. It would be impossible. They would have looked at him and said, "You are a false prophet," according to Deuteronomy 13. Worse than that, he would have been accused of blasphemy for changing the word of the Almighty. Think about that. So all the denominations out there that claim this, here's my advice. Go and sin no more. Change what you're doing. Get with the word and figure it out. Now, if you're wondering, well, can we still believe the Bible? The answer is yes. Because careful study, with very, very, very careful study, we can verify what was added by someone else years later, not the original writers. Now, what we can't figure out is what they may have deleted. Was Jesus talking about marriage and divorce at this point? He very well could have been. But someone after the original writer, with their own personal agenda, decided to change it. It's that simple. You might be wondering, and I hope you're wondering, Well, how does knowing these things help us live the way we are designed to live by our Creator? If we're made in His image, how can knowing these things help us? I'm glad you asked. Because knowing the truth has the ability to set you free from the man-made doctrines that conflict with the sacred word of our Creator. Knowing the truth sets you free from the traditions that trap you with things that conflict with His word. Knowing these things can free you to live the way you are designed. Not to live in sin, but the freedom to follow His word the way He intended us to follow it. Not the way we make it up. Not the way we do things. Not the way we twist it and turn it into whatever we think it wants to be or whatever we want it to be. That's why these things are so important, so that we do have the freedom and the ability to live the way we are designed to live. I get a lot of questions about divorce. I get a lot of questions about marriage, too. And, of course, without marriage, there's no reason for divorce. But the reality is, if you follow the Creator's instructions, you won't have a problem. You won't have it to worry about. If you live the way you're designed to live, not according to some man-made doctrine or man-made tradition, but according to His word, then we are free to receive all of the blessings He chooses to bless us with. So, until Thursday, I hope everyone stays safe. I hope everyone stays vigilant. By the way, prior to Thursday, there's another hurricane about to hit Florida. Our prayers go out to everyone in that area, everyone affected or who may be affected by it. I know people are already preparing. People are already doing things. Stay safe out there. Trust in the Creator, because it is only in putting our trust in Him and Him alone that we have the comfort and the protection that He wants to offer us. So until Thursday, many, many blessings, everyone.